Hi, I'm Don Rittner.
And I'm Justyna Kostek.
And this is
History on the Road.
Justyna, you know that most people are familiar with the famous Erie Canal that made New York State famous, but that's not the only canal that made New York famous.
That's right. There was also Champlain Canal, which went from the Hudson River to the Lake Champlain. And it was built around the same time, which was just as important.
So we're going to go visit the folks at the Feeder Canal Alliance and learn more about the Champlain Canal on this edition of
History on the Road.
Nestled between the Adirondack Mountains and the lush farmlands of New York, there lies a waterway that has quietly shaped the course of history. The Champlain Canal, a vital link between the Hudson River and Lake Champlain, served as an artery of commerce, connecting the heart of New York to the larger world beyond. But its story is more than just one of trade and transportation. It's the story of how waterways have fueled development, spurred innovation, and transformed entire communities.
Yet there is another equally important waterway that helped sustain the Champlain Canal's legacy, the Feeder Canal of Glens Falls. Built in the early 19th century, this engineering marvel not only brought water to the Champlain Canal, but became a key driver of industry and growth in the region. In its heyday, the Feeder Canal-powered mills fostered the growth of Glens Falls and played a central role in the development of the Adirondacks as a transportation and manufacturing hub.
From the bustling mills of Glens Falls to the thriving ports along Lake Champlain, these canals represent more than just infrastructure. They are the lifeblood of a region that, for centuries, relied on waterways to connect people, ideas, and economies. Join us as we explore the importance of the Champlain Canal and the Feeder Canal, two vital waterways that help shape the history of New York State and beyond. The Champlain Canal is a 64-mile canal that connects the south end of Lake Champlain to the Hudson River in New York State. It was simultaneously constructed with the Erie Canal. The construction started in 1818 and the canal opened officially in 1823.
The Champlain Canal was advocated for by Elkanah Watson and General Philip Schuyler, who was instrumental in the earlier Inland Lock and Navigation Company in 1792 to create a continuous deep-water route between Schenectady and the Oneida-Cary area in the Mohawk Valley.
The Champlain Canal was constructed in 1823 as a way to bring goods to market, connecting Lake Champlain in the north at WhiteHall to the Hudson River south at Waterford, that would then connect to the Hudson River and Erie Canal. As president of the Western and Northern Inland Lock Company, General Philip Schuyler reported to the New York State Legislature in 1793 the results of his company's preliminary surveys and suggested the commercial value that a canal system would create and promoted the development of the Champlain Canal.
The main section of the Champlain Canal, which connects the Hudson River to Lake Champlain, was opened for navigation of September 10, 1823, the same day as the larger Erie Canal, to which it is connected. The Erie got more attention.
The Champlain began at Waterford at the confluence of the Mohawk and Hudson Rivers. Waterford is the first incorporated village in New York State. From Waterford's 3 locks, it went north for 64 miles through the communities such as Mechanicville, Stillwater, Schuylerville, Fort Miller, Fort Edward, Fort Anne, and WhiteHall, a total of 23 locks, and at once became shipping points and depots for supplies such as sawdust, lumber, lime, paper, and other material needed for the development of America.
In 1822, a 7-mile feeder canal was built at the city of Glens Falls and took water from the Hudson River east to the Champlain Canal. It failed. In 1824, a dam was built across the Hudson River upstream from Glens Falls with the purpose of bringing enough water for the Champlain Canal.
In 1832, the Feeder Canal was widened and deepened to accommodate more boat traffic. 13 stone locks were constructed to compensate for the 130-foot drop at Sandy Hill, now called Hudson Falls. This included 5 combine locks that dumped water into the Hudson River, which lowered the water by 55 feet.
The Feeder Canal is now opened by the New York State Canal Corporation and run as a popular park along the town path for joggers, bikers, and tourists. In 1987, a nonprofit Feeder Canal Alliance was formed to preserve, promote, and maintain the Feeder Canal.
We're going to stop at the Feeder Canal Alliance and talk to its executives about the history and ongoing educational programs.
So we're here at the Feeder Canal silos.
Could you tell us a little bit about the site?
Sure. You're at the historic Feeder Canal coal silos and at the Howard Raymond Field School. It's 5 different silos that were built in 1906 after they burned down because they were originally wood. So they are, we have redone 2 of them into classrooms, one of which is behind us, and we give different programs here, educational programs for children and for adults.
What exactly is a feeder canal? What are you feeding?
We're feeding the Champlain Canal. The water from the Hudson River has to go to the Champlain Canal because there's a high spot in the Champlain Canal, and when boats come out of Waterford, where the Champlain starts, they can't get through unless they have enough water to raise the boats up through the locks to get into the Champlain. So that's where it starts. And then we got a grant about 1995 or so to redo the trail. You know, it used to be a towpath, and we turned it into an educational trail. So that's 9 miles long now.
So the feeder canal feeds the Champlain Canal. But so it's just with water? Were there boats on the feeder canal too?
Yeah, first it was just built as a feeder, and it was built in the early 1820s. So I think it was completed at the beginning of 1824, so close to 200 years old. And its primary job, as Howard said, was to feed the water from the Hudson River into the Champlain Canal system. But the folks around here quickly realized we can make a lot of money, use this as a commercial route. So they widened the canal, and then it was wide enough for boats to go through. But when I say widened, it's still pretty narrow because the boats were about 13 feet wide and maybe 90 to 100 feet long, and they would hold all kinds of commodities, furs, sawdust, limestone.
Being the Northway of today, all the commodities, you know, they clear cut the Adirondack Mountains, right, back in the day. And then what happened is all the lumber, all the logs came down the Hudson, and then they went, there's a place here called Big Boom Road. There's a big boom there where they stopped them. And each one of those sawmills had their own insignia on the log. And then they would divert them to wherever they had to put
like an autograph.
Yeah, like where they had a sawmill. And this happens to be, there was a sawmill here at Griffin Lumber. Altogether on the Feeder Canal, there were approximately 11 sawmills. However, the biggest ones was Griffin Lumber, and then there's another one between here and the 5 combines, which was Kenyon Lumber. And as Patty said, the lumber was, was sawed there, shipped to New York or wherever. And then same with the sawdust for the ice boxes back then, they had no refrigeration. And then what happened is they would go further down and they would bring coal back and other commodities. So there's a lot of going on back and forth as far as bringing it back in, and that's how the silos came about, to be able to provide heating for the people here in the North Country, which we needed it very in the businesses.
Yes, and how long is the canal?
The Feeder Canal?
Yes.
The Feeder Canal is about 9 miles. Well, a little more than that, 9 miles, a little over, because our trail is 9 miles, but then it dumps into the Champlain about another, probably another mile or so. Maybe say 10 miles. If you walked, you would get to the Champlain Canal.
Yeah.
Well, it seems to me a lot of people don't know anything about the Champlain Canal because the Erie Canal, everyone knows about, right?
Right.
I mean, songs have been written about it, legends have been, but when you say Champlain Canal, they go, what are you talking about? But it was just as important, right?
Oh,
it was more of a north-south,
to people in this
right?
area.
Yeah.
At one point in time, the Adirondacks was the lumber company. How do I say this correctly? At one point in time, the Adirondacks was the lumber industry of the world, had the most lumber coming out of this area, and the Feeder Canal played a big part in that role of getting the lumber onto the Hudson and through the Feeder Canal itself, as Howard mentioned, as sawdust, because back in the day when there wasn't any refrigerators, the way to keep the ice from melting, they packed it in sawdust. So there was a lot of sawdust coming through here to send it down to New York City so that the folks down there could use it. And then when they brought the canal boats back, they came with all other things that people here needed. So it really was responsible for generating a huge economic boom in Glens Falls and the Adirondacks in general.
But where did it start?
It starts in Waterford, which is right near Troy. Yeah, that's where it hooks into Erie. Erie, they come together.
Right, but I mean, where's the origin to the Champlain? It's way up north, isn't it?
No, it just goes from there. It goes right straight. The only thing is we end up, Champlain Canal goes up into Plattsburgh, hooks into St. Lawrence. Yeah. The water goes that way. It's kind of interesting how the water does travel from, all the way through, and then end up. If you go the other way, this goes to St. Lawrence, and the other way goes to Mississippi. Because we're kind of high point here in the Adirondacks.
Yeah, I know that Troy, which is the terminus for the canal, became a big iron manufacturing company because of the iron ore and the pig iron that they were making up in the Adirondacks.
Yeah, right. Up in Tajas and all that. A lot during the Second World War. A lot of that refined titanium came, but that was after the Feeder Canal. Afterward, by then it was trucked and stuff. After the Second World War.
Right. Well, this was used through the 1940s, though, right? The canal was actually actively used from the 1830s when it was widened through the 1940s, and that's pretty amazing, considering that obviously before the 1940s there was, we had roads being built, and we had trucks, and we also had trains, but it was still being used. And in fact, what's really interesting is the Champlain is still being used for commerce. So there are canal boats that are going up and down the Champlain that are still using that waterway for commerce and commercial endeavors.
That's why the Erie is a lot more commercial on there, as far as that's concerned. And ours is more recreational. And there is some minimal amount of commercial on the Champlain, but it's very, very minimal. So that's an issue. That's a whole other issue, money-wise. I mean. And the Canal Corporation is part of it, and then right now the Power Authority is also part of the waterways too, and as far as the running of it. Years ago, the Canal Corporation did it, and then it got into the Thruway Authority ran it for a while. It was kind of like the mother agency, if you will, and then then they I don't know what happened then, but then now the New York State Power Authority is.
So there's been a shifting of which state agency has been in charge of the canal system. And so we work with state agencies, and because we're unique that we have 9 miles, we go through various counties, 2 counties, Warren and Washington, and various municipalities. So there's the town of Queensbury, there's the town of Kingsbury, there's Village of Hudson Falls, City of Glens Falls, and Village of Fort Edward that we're working with to try and make enhancements, make sure that the canal is preserved, because we have people coming from all over the place, especially when they're coming from Saratoga, they're visiting, or they might be visiting Lake George, and they want to do something, right? So there's people that are kayakers, paddlers, paddle boarders, right? Even families with children that want to walk with strollers, differently abled people. And what makes the Towpath Trail very unusual is that it's level in most cases, and it has very fine stone dust on it. So it's ADA compliant, so wheelchairs can easily move over it. It's not like they're having to deal with stones, crushed rocks, or anything. So it's an exciting recreational outlet for 4-season use, basically.
And the other thing that's really neat about it is we're hooked into the Empire State Trail. If you think about it, now somebody from Lake George can go on the Warren County Trail. The Warren County Trail hooks into our trail. Our trail goes down and hooks into the other trail, Empire State Trail. So you can leave Lake George and you can go down. You go to New York City. You can take a right, take a left, and go towards
on the water. On the water.
No, this is on bikes.
This is bike. Bike.
So we have a lot of cycling people that want to, find out more about it. They want to know about where do they rent bicycles when they're coming here. Let's say on a conference, or they're here on vacation and they're not driving, so they're not bringing their bicycles with them. So it's an exciting prospect to be able to offer them more options, even just for a meditative walk, right? Yes. So you just want to get away from things and you want to be in a lovely space. It's really nice that there's very scenic pastoral views, and then you're going through industrial sections too in the city of Glens Falls. So it's a very unusual trail that has a little bit of both.
But to talk about the waterway, we could canoe or kayak for 5 miles. You can get in up in Glens Falls at the dam, up at the feeder dam.
Where it starts.
Up there, right, at the Knight Street, and then put in there, and then you can take back out here. One of our parks is in Martindale Avenue here in Hudson Falls. It's 5 miles. Every spring we have a canoe paddle and race, so to speak, and a lot of people, like 60 or so vessels there, and we give prizes and stuff like that. So it's another recreational thing. Canoeing, kayaking is another big piece of it, and and it's only like, maybe the max 3 feet deep. So if anybody gets in trouble, you can walk to shore.
Yeah, right. It's not a problem.
You're not going to drown,
We
probably.
had some kayakers that came from Saranac Lake, amazingly. They wanted to do that passage, as Howard said, coming from New York City and then coming up through different waterways. So we were part of that waterway path. And so we literally get in touch with the Canal Corporation people and ask them if they can water up the canal enough so that it makes it easier passage. And so one of them did overturn, trying to get over a downed tree. But again, they're standing, right? There's no that they're going to sink or anything. It's very, very. It's not that deep. Right, so it's easy to get.
There's fish in it too. Some people come fish in it. I mean, you don't get much, but there's some fish. There has to be, there's openings in the gates, so to speak, so fish can get through. That's another piece of it. But we don't really do much with that.
No, we don't do a lot of that. But bird watchers, obviously, photography enthusiasts, history enthusiasts, because there's a lot of people that are interested in the canals.
Right.
And the Erie Canal system does a really good job of advertising and including us in the mix, that we're a historic site. Since 1985, we've been listed as a National Historic Place, so which we are, clearly. It was still doing its job from the 1820s. So it's really cool to learn about the history, and then also to have these classes where we're teaching kids a little bit about science and technology too, where they can look at the water under microscopes, where they can test the water to see what's in it, what is the composition of it. They can also do math by counting the blocks, measuring the blocks, and doing multiplication, and then obviously learning about the history.
Yes, yeah, you did mention that you guys are also a classroom.
Yes.
So exactly what kind of programs do you offer at the moment?
Well, again, it's fourth grade classes for that tie into Ticket to Ride program that's offered by the state, and so we're in line with the curriculum that they're covering about canals. So they learn a little bit about canal life, and then they also do a little bit of testing of the water. They test out how to use pulleys, or how pulleys were used to get the coal carts up on the top of the rail that's inside, which I know you'll show that later, right. What the rails look like. And we'll take a look at the coal cart in the other classroom area that we have a little bit more exhibits. They also look at our dioramas, where we've got sections of a boat, a canal boat.
Canal boats, yeah, we have that. And we also have a shanty down here. It's called the Lock Tender Shanty, and that's a replica of where each one of the locks had to have somebody there to open and close the gates so the water could raise or lower the water, and that's a replica of it. And we talk about that as to how that all worked. And the big thing was, Don, as you have already looked at, the 5 combines down Hudson Falls.
Yeah.
That was kind of interesting because all the boats had to go through there, and it took about a little over an hour to lock through. There's five locks, right?
It would raise and lower the boats 11
and the
feet
deal with
each
it was,
lock.
there was a lot of stories about all that, how they used to come near it, and they would kind of fight. The different people would kind of fight to get who's going to get in line, because we didn't have 4 or 5 boats there, and it takes long. You got an hour to get through. If you got 4 or 5 boats down 4 or 5 hours, then you want to go. And the other interesting thing about the history of it was they lived on the boats, the families.
Yeah, we have
there.
pictures of families that are just
right.
incredible.
Even
They
the
used to
kids.
chain the
Yeah.
children, because some children sadly would fall off the boats and drown. So there's pictures of children dressed in pretty decent clothing, like they look like they're going on, out to a party,
Right.
and there's a little chain around them so that they don't fall off the boat.
Yeah.
Because the parents are busy doing other things. The mom might be cooking, the father's tending the boat and steering and whatever else, and so yeah, there's people
What about
live there.
education? What about how did they get educated?
That's a good question. Probably.
It was summer because of winter. Of course, the water would they would shut down.
Yeah,
They would-
true. They'll
Right
probably
now they
during
shut
the
it down.
wintertime, yeah.
Yeah, like in November, so they'll drain it, and And the other interesting thing is most of the walls are made of limestone that was quarried here in Kingsbury, and in fact marble was even quarried in Glens Falls, as you know, and a lot of that went down the canal. But what it is it's soft, and it's amazing how even back then they could end up mortise them out for the gates to open and close like that. They round them out. You'll see that down to 5 combines.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how they were able to do that. And then at the 5 combines, there was different sluiceways, because when they shut it off, they need X number of gallons of water to raise and lower the boats. Well, what do you do with the other water? Here it keeps coming, right? So what they do was they have a sluiceway. And the original sluiceway went in and it followed each one of the locks, and it had wooden floors in them. And so each lock had its own down through. But then that deteriorated quite rapidly. And then each one of those had a stone roof on them, and it had like the keystone in it, you know, like you see when you put rock stones together.
Right.
And then
So we have that. We have a sample of that we're working with Canal Corporation to give folks access via bridges so that they can cross over safely the locks and walk down the pathway so that they can see one of the original archways to the
And then what they had to do, when they started deteriorating, then they went above ground. They made concrete ones, so they diverted that way. So just they didn't last, you know. But it was amazing.
But we have pictures with the wooden ones. That's
it's
super
amazing
cool.
the workmanship that they did those years to you know, not much equipment like we have today, you know.
Right.
And even these silos. These silos have been here since the early 1900s, and you see there's no. Each one of those has a 1 inch cable all the way around every one of those courses, and what it is that's how they all held together, and it's amazing. You look at them and they're
They're still in pretty decent shape
Yeah.
for being as old as they are.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
In better shape than me.
better shape of all of us. Right?
So you're a nonprofit organization. Where do you get your funds?
Well, from a variety of sources. Obviously, we look to write grants for different things that we need, but we also have to continue to take care of these, which were generously given to us by the Tuba, the Family Foundation. And so we reach out to local businesses. We try and raise funds through our Brew Fest, which is a great fundraiser. Every April, we have a Brew Fest in downtown Glens Falls, and we raise the funds there and share them with the Adirondack Theater Festival. So that's a very big fundraiser. And we're trying to do radio and, you know, different outreach to get more people from out of the area to find out about us, come to the Brew Fest, and then come back to Glens Falls, come back and take, you know, advantage of all the different recreational opportunities that are here while they're on vacation. But we also hope that some of those folks become friends of the Feeder Canal Alliance, right? That even if they send us $50 a year, that helps us tremendously to have the funds that we need to take care of what we need to here, as well as help out with replacing of different things. Like some of the bridges need to be replaced, and even though we don't own the canal, and it is the responsibility of the Canal Corporation to take care of things, organizations like ours throughout the canal system help to try and raise the funds needed to take care of different things and make enhancements as well.
So you have like a cooperative agreement with the state then?
Well, yeah, each organization, you know, has, they're recognized by the Canal Corporation.
We have a permit. We have a permit, and
Yeah.
then you know, because and they end up with that in mind. They end up with the different activities that we have, and it's all historical also, you know. But we're also, you know, repurposing it to begin, you know, kayaking and biking, healthy sort of things. We have a relationship with this Glens Falls Hospital,
yeah.
and they support us for signage and things like that. So we reach out to different organizations, and there's quite a few local philanthropists locally that, you know, that support us with foundations and money and stuff like that. So we're always scrapping.
We're always looking.
Yeah.
That's for sure. We're always looking for volunteers. We're looking for donors, individual donors. We're looking for businesses that want to get their name on something, right? So we're going to be reaching out to more folks to give us different grants or support in the thousands of dollars, and then they will be promoted as presenting our music concert series, our educational series. You know, they can pick and choose what they want to have their name related to. Same thing with the Brew Fest. There's different folks that are involved with those sponsorships, and that, you know, again, they get the recognition for that.
So can you give us a tour?
I am
Sure,
getting so mad.
sure. We have pictures in the office where we had the big rolls of paper coming from Finch Prime back then. I mean, they were mammoth. And they were loaded right up, and to think at how they built these canals, so there's, you know, they did the draft and they didn't get out, otherwise they'd be on the ground, you know what I mean? There's enough water to float them. And this, Rick Conley is the one that made these dioramas. He was a teacher in Hudson Falls, and he's a railroader type, you know, model railroad. And everything is to scale, and everything is exactly the way it was before. And
these gates were all done by hand, right?
yeah, yeah. You
Yeah,
can see
so
they
people
were
would be on
automated.
either side of the gates
Yeah.
to open the gates and close the gates so the water would rise, and then the boat could go through, and then they'd have to do the whole thing again, and which is
Would
why it
drop
took a
down.
good hour to get through.
You can see where the sluice way. That's the sluice way over there, and they had gates here. That's the valves open and close. So when the water, once they get enough water and shut it here, that's where the water would go down and get on the other one. And each one of these locks, the doors, had openings in them. You see where the little lever is there? So when they get enough, had to let the water out, the levers would be opened up so the water would flow out, and then the boats would go down. So it was kind of neat. And thinking about this was late 1800s they built all this. You know, it's amazing that they had the wherewithal to be able to do that.
Was there any accidents? I mean, those doors don't look, you know, I could see one of those doors breaching while they're...
Could you imagine? I don't know.
Maybe
Think about this, that's only 15 feet wide, and the boats were 13 feet wide, so they could not make
had
too
to
much
line it right
mistakes.
up. They had to line up
Yeah,
pretty
that's
close.
true.
Yeah, it was quite
The
a
only place to go is down.
right. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah,
Like all of us.
Yeah.
yeah, right. Yeah, this is what they call butterfly valves. You open that up,
It opens on both sides.
and then
it
you
would
see
go
up
on
there
both
where
sides.
the screen is. That's where it would drop down. It would drop down in here. Okay, it would drop all the way down, and then they would end up. And
So this and men are up on top,
Up on top.
pushing this thing.
Pushing, grunting,
and
yelling.
grunting and pulling levers and washing the coal down.
Yeah.
And breathing coal dust probably.
And breathing coal dust. And meanwhile, people are pulling up with their wagons on all these openings to get their
To buy their
portion
coal.
of, to buy their coal.
But that's how they heated their homes, right?
right.
The Champlain Canal and the Feeder Canal of Glens Falls were more than just waterways. They were the lifeblood of an entire region, connecting communities, powering industry, and shaping the future of New York State. The canals were the arteries that carried commerce, resources, and ideas, fostering growth and prosperity in places that would have otherwise remained isolated.
To complete our trip, we decided to go and visit the 5 combines in the Hudson Falls.
There are 5 locks, and as we learned, it took an hour to go down each lock. As we get to the 5 combines, it's hard to imagine how active this area was 100 years ago, and yet looking at old photos, you can see the technology of the time and how important it was.
Today, there are no gates to hold the water back, but old pictures show the complex nature of trying to get canal boats down to a 55-foot drop in elevation. And as we learned, it took 1 hour for each drop. Patty told us that the New York State Canal Corporation will hopefully be putting some money into fixing up the 5 combines park with the new bridges and brush removal.
Though much of the bustling activity of the canals has quieted over time, their legacy endures. The feats of engineering, the ingenuity of those who built and maintained them, and the stories of the people who relied on them still resonate in the communities that grew around these waterways.
Today, these canals stand as quiet witnesses to the past, reminders of a time when the flow of water carried more than just goods. It carried ambition, progress, and the promise of a connected world.
The Champlain Canal and the Feeder Canal of Glens Falls, though perhaps overlooked in the rush of modern life, remain central to understanding the development of New York State and the role of waterways in shaping the nation's history. Their story, though a chapter long past, continues to flow through the veins of history, an enduring testament to the power of connection, industry, and human innovation. Well, I hope you enjoyed that adventure, and I hope you get a chance to visit the Feeder Canal.
So grab your kayak or your walking shoes and explore the original canal and the 5 locks. Until then, we'll see you again on the next episode of History on the Road.
I don't have you in it yet.
What? Dale?